Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated, coming to you live from Lagos. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago, and coming up on the program, Nigerian National Insurance Commission suspends all bank assurance distribution channel in the financial sector. Kenya's Treasury opposes move by Parliament to cap commercial lending rates. Plus, a South African court strikes out the tariff increases granted to power utility company Eskom. We'll begin here in Nigeria, where analysts at Ecobank Research Group say Total Nigeria's performance outlook has been upgraded to positive from neutral and recommend a hold at current market price of 248 naira. Other shares of major oil trader Total Nigeria climbed 3.33% on Tuesday on the news of the company's satisfactory half-year 2016 earnings. Our listed oil trader beats estimates as revenue jumps 29.92% to 145.48 billion naira. Revenue was reported at a wide margin to the upside, taking advantage of the unregulated petroleum product import regime. Lubricant sales was higher, 35% in the 6 months to June, while cost to sales ratio falls to 84.26%. Earnings before tax, amortization and depreciation saw a growth of 336%. And in the UK, the unemployment total fell by 52,000 to 1.64 million between April and June. The UK's unemployment rate remained at 4.9%. According to the Office for National Statistics, the number of people on the Claremont count in July, the first month since the Brexit vote, was 763,600, down 8,600 from June. Wages excluding bonuses rose 2.3% in the 3 months to June compared with a year earlier. And in Europe, Iceland has announced plans to lift nearly all restrictions on currency movements imposed on its citizens in the wake of the 2008 global financial crisis. The measures come 10 weeks ahead of national elections. The Icelandic Finance Ministry has unveiled draft legislation that would allow Icelanders to buy property overseas and expand their right to purchase foreign currency in cash significantly. Drafted with the approval of the International Monetary Fund, the bill is due to be presented to Parliament this week and is expected to be approved. Hello, eyes are on the Fed's minutes later today. Let's cross over to Frankfurt to see how investors there are waiting for this document. DWTV Channels TV financial correspondent Conrad Busen joins me now. Good afternoon, Conrad. Well, the minutes from the Fed's meeting in July is being awaited. What are the expectations out there, especially as the data released on Tuesday painted a mixed picture of the economy? Saw the U.S. Labor Department reporting that inflation rose just 0.2% in July.
Well, we'll be getting the minutes of the last monetary policy makers meeting from the United States tonight, and it's quite obvious that the recovery in the U.S. economy has not been, very, very decisive and very, very strong, but it's obviously there. And given that at the last meeting, the monetary policy officials in the U.S. have said that they wanted to wait for the Brexit referendum and for the potential impact this might have on the economy and, of course, on the financial sector before they decide to increase interest rates in the United States further. Now, it can be expected that there is enough data, at least enough experience after the Brexit referendum to say that the immediate referendum did not have a very strong negative impact on the economy yet, and that it did not have muffling or cutting or very negative effect on the financial sector as a whole. So it's quite likely that the hints are rising for interest rates in the U.S. to rise, despite the data, some of the data we've been getting from the U.S., which had shown that, of course, there was also some weakness still in the U.S. economy.
Well, I guess a lot of speculation, a lot of anticipation is following that minute. We'll just keep waiting. In the meantime, let's look at what's happening in Iceland. Now, that government plans to ease currency restrictions imposed on its citizens in the wake of the 2008 global financial crisis. What will this mean for the country, and do investors out there see this move as more of political?
Well, the lifting of these capital controls of transactions from and to Iceland means that the country is coming a bit back to normal. As a nation, it will be able to do and operate like a normal country also in terms of banking and financial in the future. Remember, the capital restrictions had been have been put into position by the Icelandic government after the collapse of several banks in Iceland, where billions of savers' money from all over Europe was parked and was invested. After the collapse of these banks, not the taxpayers in Iceland were held accountable, but many of the savers, they had to accept a haircut, and also, of course, the investors in these banks had to pay for the collapse. That was heavily criticized worldwide, but it has shown that the steps that the government in Reykjavik in Iceland has taken were wise, and that now the economy in Iceland is back on track so that the capital controls can be lifted.
Now, Conrad, the merger between Bayer and Monsanto, it's back on the news, and there seemed to be some kind of issue there. Now, that German chemicals giant, that's Bayer, is reportedly considering making an unsolicited bid for the U.S. seed specialist Monsanto. Don't forget, Monsanto had rejected 2 offers from Bayer, calling an increased bid of about $125 million in July financially inadequate. Why then is Bayer still pushing for this merger, even after Monsanto rejected an improved offer from them in July?
Well, obviously the CEO of Bayer, Werner Baumann, must be convinced that the offer he makes for Monsanto is valuable and is fair. $125 Bayer is offering for Monsanto, for 1 share of Monsanto. The CEO and the management board of Monsanto has not agreed that this is a fair offer, even though it was already increased. They are not saying exactly the amount at which they would be happy, but it's rumored that they would be happy to accept an offer of Bayer to 130, if it was at 130 and 135 dollars. It's very difficult to say what motives exactly are driving the parties here. A lot of bargaining is involved. Of course, this is highly political as well, given that Monsanto is such an important player in the worldwide markets. And we have a presidential election in the United States at the moment where a lot of, national influence and the influence of companies on the national economy is at stake and being discussed. It's very rattling, but it is true. We have to sort of wait and see what happens in this takeover deal, and whether, shareholders of Monsanto come out and accept the deal and accept the takeover offer, despite the opposition of the Monsanto Board of Management.
Right, thank you very much, Conrad. We'll sure keep an eye on those developments and see what happens thereafter. And of course, we'll keep an eye on the U.S. Fed meeting coming out later today. Well, we'll quickly move on now to Japan, to Asia, where Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225 index rose 0.9% to 16,745.64. Chinese stocks were muted after a long delayed scheme connecting Shenzhen and Hong Kong Stock Exchange was approved. The CSI 300 index, which tracks the biggest companies in Shanghai and Shenzhen, rose 0.5%, while the benchmark Shanghai Composite was flat at 3,111.25. Well, we'll take a quick break, and when we return, we will look at Egypt's economy. Why is the IMF loan important to that country? Details in a moment.